Six Nations 2024, Ireland taking on Italy, which could be a wee bit of a mismatch. Recent times it's been pretty lopsided. We are going to preview some squads, some stats, recent history, predictions, and you guys can let us know your thoughts. But yeah, Ireland flying pretty high after what is largely being seen as their toughest game of the campaign with that big away win over the French in Marseille. Italy have lost their first game, although I think, under new coach Gonzalo Quesada still managed to get a bit of respect with their close scoreline over the English, even if it was a late consolation try that kind of got them within touching distance all too late. But yeah, this seems like another level of a test to be going away to Dublin for the Italians right now. But anyway, it's a 4 o'clock in the morning kickoff for me, so I'm kind of hoping that the Italians can put up a bit of a decent show. They may have hoped for a kind of less experienced Irish squad, but Andy Farrell has stuck to his usual guns of not making a heck of a lot of changes. I think by his own standards, this is a lot of changes. But the starting 15 is largely pretty stable. Porter, Sheehan and Bealham. That's the same front row as last week, barring the fact that Bealham steps up for Tadhg Furlong, who's got a calf injury and is apparently not trained. So that's not ideal because he's had issues in that area before. But it's 2 of the 3, same as last week. Joe McCarthy and James Ryan is a pretty devastating looking second row in terms of like just pure work rate and power. So there's no Tadhg Byrne this week who sits. I didn't see them mention him in terms of being one of the guys who's out injured. But yeah, he did a fair bit of work last week. So it makes a little bit of sense to give a bit of rotation in. But yeah, that's given that Joe McCarthy was bloody man of the match last week. And James Ryan was kept to the bench. He'll be absolutely firing to go. Ryan, Baird, Caelan, Doris and Jack Conan is a changed back row with Peter Amani also having a bit of a calf issue, so he is out, but Caelan Doris captains the side from number 7, which means a guy who wasn't that long ago World Player of the Year has to drop to the bench, and Josh van der Flier. Ryan Baird's promotion from the bench to the number 6 jersey is a good reward for him, and Andy Farrell, I think, talked up in the press conference, his form at club level. He's been unlucky not to start last week, basically, so good chance for him to impress for number 6. I mean, that's some big timber. It's 6, 5 and 4, isn't it? Baird, Ryan and McCarthy. Goodness gracious me. And then Jack Conan gets a crack at number 8. He's been, largely relegated to the bench himself in kind of, I want to say the last, is it 18 months? Is it that long? It's been a while. But, yeah, good for him to stake a claim back on that number 8 jersey. It's been hard when Caelan Doris has been the guy keeping him out. Craig Casey and Jack Crowley's the 9-10 combo. So Casey replaces Gibson-Park, who drops to the bench. That, I think, is just the genuine bit of rotation. Craig Casey, he needs a bit more game time at test level. Gibson-Park and Conor Murray are very experienced campaigners, so this is a game that Craig Casey, who's been, just quietly ticking through a few caps of his own, but it's to be, another one where he gets the start at 9, which is good for him. And Jack Crowley, had a couple of missed moments last week, but was largely very good in an absolute cauldron in France. So for him, it's another week. He's at home this time. It's a lesser ranked opponent, so I back him to really boss the show and put in another mature performance. McCloskey. Stuart McCloskey, he's got 2 names, Mark, and Robbie Henshaw is the 12-13 combo. So Bundy Aki is also, I'm assuming, rested because they didn't bring him up as being injured. He was on fire last week, wasn't he? But McCloskey is one of my personal favourites. He is also a rather large individual who likes carrying the ball into contact, so I look forward to seeing him doing that against the Italians. Good for him to get a chance because the Irish midfield's another area that's very crowded and it's not always easy to get game time. Henshaw does continue on. James Lowe, Calvin Nash and Hugo Keenan is an unchanged back 3. I mean, they did ask about that in terms of no rotation, and Andy Farrell basically said that James Lowe is lacking on game time anyway, so he'll benefit from another week. Calvin Nash is a kind of young guy and will benefit from this experience, and then Keenan is certainly the form 15 in that 15. I've been keeping an eye on the Irish depth chart for the last few years, and I would say, I haven't gone back to check the numbers, but off the top of my head, Keenan is probably the guy who's dominated his position potentially more than anyone else in terms of just hogging the minutes. There was certainly one season where he virtually played all the minutes. Not quite, but it was bloody close. Replacements, Ronan, Kelleher, same as last week, but then Loughman and O'Toole come in as your prop replacements. That is genuine bit of rotation. Again, Iain Henderson also gets a crack this week from the bench. That's how deep the locking depth goes in Ireland right now. That Iain Henderson wasn't even in the squad last week. Was he injured? I don't think so. And then, yeah, he's only on the bench this week. He's a guy who would start for many countries. Van der Flier, Gibson-Park, Harry Byrne and Jordan Larmour are another couple of rotation guys. So, yeah, good chance for Harry Byrne if he can get some decent minutes. Hopefully at least 15, 20, I think would be beneficial for him. And then Jordan Larmour, likewise, is another one who, with the competitiveness of the outside backs in the Irish squad, tends to lack on a bit of game time. Some of the guys who impressed last week, just if you love some stats, Gibson-Park had 79 passes, which was the most of any halfback, and he scored a try as well. So it'll be a test for Craig Casey to keep things moving the same way Gibson-Park does. Dan Sheehan was the top tackler for Ireland with 10. And Calvin Nash, who kind of fell in the shadow a bit, I think, of Joe McCarthy's big performance, just quietly had 76 metres and scored his pretty easy try, but really well. You know, right place, right time. So, yeah, just quietly had a really impressive outing. For the Italians, they have had to make a few changes. They've got Sebastian N, whose name I can't usually say because YouTube flags his name as a swear. He is injured, so he's missing in the number 6 jersey, and Lorenzo Conan as well. So disruption to the Italian back row. They've had to make a couple of changes. Captain Michele Lamaro shifts to 8 this week. He's usually a 7, but he did play, I think, the 2021 Six Nations campaign pretty much exclusively at number 8, so it's not like he hasn't done this before at test level. And Zuliani is a hell of a player to bring in at 7. I feel like if not for Lamaro being captain, you know, Zuliani probably gets a lot more game time because he is a very, very good tackler and, you know, really efficient at the breakdown, decent on the ball carry as well. So he's just one of those unfortunate guys that either has to shift positions, come off the bench, basically to make way for the captain. And then Izikor, who got his debut last week, comes in at number 6. He'll be looking to carry hard and make some tackles as well. Rutzer and Canone is the same second row. They'll need to be physical up against what is a big physical Irish second row. And then the front row of Ciccarelli, Lucchesi and Fischetti is also unchanged. So the tight 5 is unchanged. Loose forwards, they've had to make a few injury-enforced changes. Yeah, I think it's good to see the Italians keeping the same props. These are their best props that are available, and their scrum work was good last week, and it's an area that Ireland, I think, will genuinely be looking to take a step up from last week, so I hope they can get a bit of parity. It'll make the game a lot more interesting if they do. Backs-wise, Varney is up from the bench this week. He replaces Alessandro Garbisi, who is rotated out of the 23. Paolo Garbisi continues on at 10. And then Menoncello and Brix continue on in the midfield. Menoncello was unbelievable last week. He was, I mean, remember he missed the World Cup with injury. Cracked through, got us, assisted a try, got 80 metres, which is more than a lot of other guys got in the week, certainly more than any midfielders. Broke tackles, got into clean space, like was just a real handful. So McCloskey's a lot bigger if they're going head-to-head, but Menoncello is very agile. So, yeah, the Irish defenders will not, they'll have done their homework. They can't sleep on a guy like that. And Brix with his link-up play was also very exceptional. Pani and Ioane continue on the wings. Ioane is certainly the most likely of the Italian guys to break tackles, especially in the back line. But then they've also got Capuozzo back this week. He was a late scratching last week on the wing. This week he's named at fullback ahead of Tommy Allen, which may suggest they're going to kick a little bit less. They kicked a decent amount last week. Remember, under Kieran Crowley, they kicked it not a heck of a lot. They increased the kicking rate last week against England, but yeah, when they played Tommy Allen and Garbisi together, that's more of a kind of kicking duo. But when you've got James Lowe in the backfield for Ireland, maybe you don't want to kick him the ball. We will have to wait and see. Nicotera, Spagnolo, and Zelocchi are the front row replacements for the Italians, which is the same. Zambonin is also there. Ross Vincent, the Exeter Chiefs man, will get his test debut if he comes off the bench. Pedrello is the backup halfback this week, so Garbisi is out of the 23. That's Alessandro entirely. And Tommy Allen drops to the bench alongside Federico Mori, like I mentioned. I mentioned Ioan's defenders beaten. I think he was the top tackle buster last week from the entire Six Nations with 6. But he also conceded like 3 turnovers. So he's a little bit of a kind of hit and miss guy. He's very dangerous ball in hand, but can be prone to the odd error. He took the high balls well. He took a couple of high balls, and then that led directly to Italian counter-attacking play when they spud it wide. So, yeah, you have to be mindful of kicking to this Italian team because they are quite happy to run it back. Turnovers conceded, I mentioned, from him. Larmour had 19 tackles. Menoncello had 80 metres, even 10 tackles as well. So, yeah, we can't sleep on this Italian team. They're going to be massive underdogs, but they're some good players, is kind of my point. Stats-wise for the teams, Ireland conceded 13 penalties last week, which is maybe a touch higher than they would have liked, and Andrew Porter, from memory, had 5 of them. So the scrum stats went 5 from 8 on their own ball, so certainly an area they would like to do better. Ruck speed was phenomenal, judged by the number of passes that Gibson-Park managed to get through. James Lowe's boot, I mentioned, possession was 56%, which was really high. They only knocked the ball on twice in the entire game, which is very, very hard to deal with. Like, if you don't commit guys to the ruck, you just want to keep guys up in the defensive line, hoping the opposition make a mistake, and they don't make a mistake. It can be a tough day at the office. They managed to score a couple of maul tries. They may look to push the Italian pack around in the same regard, but we'll have to see. I mentioned the Italians dangerous from kick return, scored a couple of tries in that area, so James Lowe's boot is big, but the Italians still back themselves when there is space there in the backfield. 8 offloads, 8 knock-ons, so that kind of encapsulates the way the Italians were looking to play. It was ambitious, but it didn't always play off. But you feel like they've toned some of the do-or-die kind of ambition which they had under Kieran Crowley back just a little bit, because sometimes under Crowley you felt like, come on guys, just play it safe. Just every now and again, you've just scored points. Get out of your own 22. Have a proper exit. You don't have to try and score straight away. They had to make 162 tackles. They attempted 187. So it was a big defensive shift from the Italians against England. One would imagine, with the way Ireland like to keep the ball, the Italians will probably make even more this week. It is pretty taxing to keep doing that. Yeah. Tough day at the office. Predicted, I mean, recent history, last 5 games, all 5 of them go Ireland's way, and pretty convincingly. Average score across the last 5 games, 44-14. So there's a good 30-point margin between the sides. You got 50-17, you got 57-6. I think that was the double substitution, like red card, and another guy had to go off. Game we played at Dublin a couple of years ago, so that was maybe a little bit more of an exception. The most recent game was 33-17, but yeah, there's been a few games where the Irish have put on a lot of points against the Italians. Predictions wise, the bookies are saying Ireland by 34, and the Rugby Forecast algorithm agrees down to the number 34. Italy has not won in Ireland since beaten Ireland since 2013, and not won in Ireland since 1997, which, if I'm not mistaken, was their only win on Irish soil. I'll be honest, it doesn't look very likely this week. It is likely a case of damage limitation, but like I mentioned, with a 3 o'clock kickoff locally, that's a 4 in the morning kickoff for me, so I would certainly like it to be at least tighter than expected. I will even take a crack in first half. If the Irish open them up in the second, kind of so be it. But I hope the Italians don't kind of have those floodgates open from, from the first kind of 5 minutes or so, because then it genuinely could get pretty messy. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Luke Pearce from England is the ref for this one. You guys let us know your thoughts. How do you reckon it is going to go? If you want previews for the other 2 games this weekend, the Scots and the French, and England up against Wales, they'll be up there or down there, or you guys know where to find them. But yeah, you guys let us know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.